We are not just passive observers of our world, but active participants. The light, space, and materials that make up our environment influence our thoughts and emotions. But the world is so big, and we are so small. Our individual actions seem insignificant compared to the forces of time, nature, and society. The untouchable beauty of a natural landscape gives the illusion of it being a powerful force of vengeful disregard. And the crumbling ruins of a cultural wasteland give the illusion of the impermanence of our actions. It looks like whatever we do today will be erased by geological history. But all we have control of is what we do, and our actions have profound impact on the well-being of our world. I'm an artist inspired by my environment, my real one, not just the natural one. I feel the effects my environment has on me, and I see the effects humanity has on the environment. How do we talk about this symbiotic relationship of codependent allies? I'm compelled to make art that highlights the power and the poetry of the world we live in while revealing the consequence of our actions. I grew up in New York City, where the dominant life is human life. The environment was rigorously regulated and never under control. The great outdoors was full of danger, adventure, and the constant quest of freedom. I began staging photographic tableaus of kids in the woods or in abandoned industrial areas, away from the societal rules and expectations of grown-ups. Not being bad, just being wild human animals set free in the elusive magic of after dark. I wanted my viewer to be able to project themselves into these liberating environments, so I presented my images as light boxes and set them in a small, dark room to create a quiet breeding ground of fantasy and memory. But a picture is still a picture, and there remained an obvious distance between the subject of my photograph and the intended subject of my piece, the viewer. Instead of having my viewer relate to somebody else being emotionally influenced by an evocative environment, I wanted to create an environment in which to provide an experience. In cities where the cacophony of culture prevails, we become disconnected with the profound experience of being alone in a powerful environment. What do we do when cultural norms prove impotent? Do we act on instinct or morals? I built Inside Out House to capture the feeling of freedom and fear, isolation and elation felt while standing alone on a country road at night. The panoramic images of desolate farmscapes are printed on backlit transparencies and used to form the interior walls of a small farmhouse that could be transported back to the city for urban dwellers. The vast American landscape is recreated in a cell-sized space with walls that appear to be built out of distance and light. And while Inside Out House stages the power of the ingested landscape, it ignores the actions of the viewer and the reactions of the environment. To activate my viewer and articulate my environment, I animated the garden with responses to the viewer's movements. When the viewer gets within range, robotic flowers enclose their petals within their leaves, shaking as if they're nervous. If the viewer continues to approach, the flowers respond by becoming aggressive, snapping their petals and leaves open and shut. Only when the viewer retreats will the flowers relax, open their leaves, and expose their petals. The viewer, in turn, reacts to the flowers. They will either retreat apologetically or embrace confrontation with the skittish sculptures and approach them as a piece of art to be examined and understood. I'm asking my viewer to question their responsibility for their environment. Are the flowers mere objects to be enjoyed, or beings with feelings to be respected? Animating my sculptures makes them seem alive, and so how they are made should make sense from within the imaginary world from which they come. I don't just want my sculptures to look real. I don't just want them to act real. I want them to be what they are, inorganic others born from the constructed reality of consumer culture. The material matters. I don't live in a world of raw material. I live in a world of stuff. And in my dystopian future, the reanimated remnants of post-industrial sentience will be the survivors of civilization. Once its primary function is lost, what else could it be? Animating the inanimate brings it to life, and brown paper bags inspire the same feeling of freedom as any bird when it takes flight. For brown paper bag birds, highlighting the beauty and the poetry of an ubiquitous material allows us to see a bird and think of freedom, and see garbage as a reminder of what's lost. In my dystopian future, the obsolete machine is prime material, especially one as simple and elegant as the bicycle. It's purely mechanical and built to last. The knower machine is constructed like a carnival ride. As the viewer pedals, cyclical rolls of minimalist scenery are propelled past, mimicking the experience of freedom felt while riding alone on a country road through the crude animation of a broken machine being brought to life through movement and imagination. Our environment is saturated with the manufactured castaways people don't want or need anymore. TVs, VCRs, tape decks, computers, printers, hard drives, disk drives. Once valuable home purchases are now gathering dust at Goodwill or being discarded under the guise of electronic recycling. What is the value of these machines? It was valuable enough for the materials to be mined and processed, engineered, fabricated, shipped, and sold. And now it's worthless enough for me to chop it up and use it as an art material. If they are no longer needed to do what they were designed to do they still have value? I began taking these orphan machines apart and harvesting them for their gears, motors, and electronics. But the most powerful quality they still possess is the poetry of their complex movements. So I use these machines to puppeteer my kinetic sculptures. My installations try and seduce my viewer into a childlike fantasy while illuminating their adult choices. You seek solace in a constructed environment as you would a natural one. The machine escape tries to harness the contemplative feeling people get when immersed in a dependable, rhythmic environment, while alluding to the human tendency to try and control and ultimately destroy nature with technology. Spinner Dress examines the evolution of music through the mediated commodification of culture. It's made from woven Grateful Dead bootleg cassette tapes, and the viewer is invited to play the nonlinear recordings by fondling a spinning dress sculpture with gloves made from hacked Walkman. Moving to the American West, I was overcome by how open and exposed it was. Environmental features come together to create the texture of the surrounding landscape. It's the remnants of industry that are out of place. Here, impromptu rural shooting pits are an oasis of implied human activity where acres of public land are carpeted with thousands of spent shotgun shells. Their bounty mimics the texture of the surrounding landscape and are only out of place in color and material. These bright totems of red, blue, green, pink, yellow, they look like toys or candy, innocuous and fun. But each one arrives with a secret explosion and an engineered intention of bloodshed. How do I talk about our relationship with this environment? I wanted to create a space that evoked feelings of security and fear, showcasing the overwhelming bounty of a powerful and dangerous material. Made of immortal plastic, discarded materials linger as a reminder to what they once were. The harvested shells look like scales or cells or the bark of a tree. I wove them together into the Simia basata, an enterable biomorphic tree creature explosion that embraces the viewer with its outstretched arms of reassuring beauty while telling a history of violence and destruction. The shells can't hide what they are, but showcase their eternal, brutal beauty. The Americave considers the commodification of American culture, as seen through Plato's allegory of the cave. The teepee is made from materials that will be abundantly available after the downfall of our civilization. 100 pounds of used blue jeans, conduit, safety pins, and pop tops. And of course, the captivating hearth is the television, a tool used to depict imagined events rather than provide actual experience. The result is eerily familiar and pleasantly meditative. And on the open road, what else could a vehicle be? A way of transporting us from reality to fantasy, back to reality. I built the umbrella ship with support from Artist Trust and students from Washington State University to bring to life the childish assumption of the way machines could work. Why do we accept things for the way things are just because it's the way they have always been? The physical realization of a sailboat gliding across the desert landscape begged for additional illusions reminiscent of a childlike dream vessel. So the vehicle transitions from bed to ship to bicycle. It's propelled by a large umbrella that can be steered to catch the wind and walking chuck oars. A single passenger climbs into the bedboat and is able to sail the umbrella ship across land. The Humanal is the piece that I'm currently working on with the Robotics Club at Washington State University. It's designed to question the relationship between the human and the other. Machines, animals, strangers, our environment. How do we hear their voice? In a cold, dimly blue-lit space, a humanoid, animalistic robot paces back and forth in front of the entrance to a fiery red cave. It's a sentry, protecting its lair. When it senses an intruder, it stops, turns its head, and glows red, voicing its displeasure, fear, and aggression. The viewer is then forced to respond to this challenge, deciding whether to heed the warnings of a being of unknown power and back off, or embrace the humanal as a piece of art to be examined and understood. Upon inspection, familiar materials reveal a second ambiguous relationship. The humanal and cave are made from discarded plastic water bottles and shopping bags, the bringer of life and the polluter of land. We made this angry environment where we are not welcome. Our actions have profound impact on the world around us, but often go unnoticed, for better or for worse. How do we feel the effect of our actions? How do we take responsibility for what we do in a way that inspires understanding and change? I build responsive environments that through action and reaction, material and illusion, fantasy and reality, ask the viewer to question their actions in the past, present, and future. Thank you.